Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dhaher bin Dhaher, the CEO of the Registration Authority in ADGM. Abu Dhabi Global Market is an award-winning international financial center mandated to position the Emirate of Abu Dhabi as a foremost investment hub, bridging the gap between East and West and facilitating the UAE vision to establish a knowledge-based economy to support its economic diversification strategy. Comprised of three independent authorities, the ADGM Courts, Registration Authority, and Financial Services Regulatory Authority. ADGM has continuously provided its entities with a holistic, vibrant ecosystem, complemented by a progressive regulatory framework and notable offerings. Parts and parcel of these offerings is our Tech Startup License, which ensures startups across the globe are able to establish a presence within ADGM in a cost-effective and timely fashion. ADGM has striven to develop a robust startup ecosystem through various partnerships with leading local, regional, and international entities, such as Hub 71, the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, as we look to create synergistic and dynamic relationships that fortify our collective efforts and support the achievements of our shared goals. These partnerships have resulted in the development of numerous landmark initiatives across various pockets of the UAE startup landscape, such as FinTech, EdTech, and AgriTech, as well as pioneering programs such as the Department of Health, Startup Accelerator, and ongoing engagements with UAE University. ADGM provides a unique and end-to-end innovative environment that supports each player in anchoring their presence and accelerating their business in Abu Dhabi and across the MENA region. As a key ecosystem enabler, we play an integral role in nurturing the entrepreneurial spirit in Abu Dhabi by providing a progressive regulatory infrastructure and support services required to enable the growth of the tech ecosystem. ADGM will continue to support the UAE government ongoing efforts to develop the nation's stature as a hub of innovation, opportunity, and investment for startups across the region and globe. We are pleased to welcome companies and entrepreneurs looking for opportunities to launch and scale their businesses in Abu Dhabi and the wider Middle East region. ADGM will continue to support the UAE government's ongoing efforts to develop the nation's stature as a hub of innovation, opportunity, and investment for startups across the region and globe. We are pleased to welcome companies and entrepreneurs looking for opportunities to launch and scale their business in Abu Dhabi and the wider Middle East region. Thank you.
Marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan, shalom, and welcome to this introduction to the tech investment landscape in the United Arab Emirates, prepared especially for participants in Israel. It's barely been a few weeks since the historic peace agreement and diplomatic recognition between the UAE and Israel, and developments are moving at a dizzying pace. This is the second online event held by OurCrowd in partnership with Emirates Angels, introducing communities in each country to the tech ecosystem and potential partners among our new friends. I'm Matthew Kalman, the Chief Content Officer at OurCrowd in Jerusalem, and it's my honor to introduce today's guests, who represent the pinnacle of the Emirati tech and investment community. In the past few days, OurCrowd has announced the signing of a memorandum of understanding with the Naboodah Group to encourage two-way investment activity between the UAE and Israel, and the appointment of its first Emirati executive who will head OurCrowd's operations in the Gulf. We'll be hearing from Emirates Angels, from senior representatives of the investment community in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and from Emirati startups. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit questions to any of our guests, and use the chat to link up with participants online now from Israel, the UAE, and around the world. The Emirati government took the initiative to establish these historic relations. So what is the view from the top? It's my honor now to welcome one of the UAE's most prominent investment officials and a leading expert on the local ecosystem, His Excellency Dr. Tariq bin Hendi, Director General of the Abu Dhabi Investment Office. Your Excellency, Dr. bin Hendi, it's a great pleasure to welcome you today. And thank you for taking the time to speak to our audience in Israel and across the globe. What would you say to them are the benefits of coming to do business in Abu Dhabi?
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you very much for welcoming me to this event. It's actually been quite an interesting time for us over the last 6 weeks or so since the official announcement on the Abraham Accords was made. And I have to say, the level of interest between not only both countries, but also other countries that engage with both countries, with both Israel and the UAE, has been quite tremendous in terms of how it is that we can create these triangles, if I may, in terms of how they're engaged and we're engaged and now bringing that together. I suppose the best way to look at this is to say that there are a few components here that apply. One is, I think there's a lot of curiosity as to what it is that we have to offer, as well as what it is that the Israeli side has to offer. I think they're the things that we know about each other in terms of, Israeli technology, in terms of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, in terms of the way that they support startups, and they've built massive unicorns based on that system that they have. And then there's what it is that we are trying to create here in that space, but also what we've been able to accomplish in terms of solid infrastructure in certain industries, such as the oil and gas industry, such as downstream chemicals, in the healthcare space. But I think from both sides, the way that we're looking at this is how is it that we can bring together that know-how, both in terms of what has worked and what hasn't worked, and try to put those things together. And I think if you look at what Abu Dhabi has, there's a consistent set of policy making, consistent programs that we have to try to drive that agenda. There's a lot of access to knowledge. And most importantly, I think this is something that we're very proud of, is that we're very proactive in terms of our approach to things. We've been getting a lot of praise recently about how it is that we've tackled 2020 in terms of the experience that we've all gone through. And I think one thing that's really stood out is that, one, we had a very strong reaction, positive reaction in terms of how do we take care of the residents in this country. But two, was that a lot of the policies that we have been putting in place over the last few years really were tested in 2020. And it turns out they were actually very resilient policies, and a lot of things that we were doing were over the last few years really materialized this year in terms of being beneficial to us. So I suppose the short answer to that is we've got a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of room for constructive disruption, and we want to have a seat at the table on the Israeli side, and we want to welcome you to the table that we're sitting at as well, and help us drive that change.
Now, I clicked on your website the other day from Jerusalem, and it all came up in Hebrew, which is very unusual for a non-Israeli website. And it struck me as a very strong statement of welcome and friendship and hospitality from the side of the UAE. What can Israeli entrepreneurs and businesses do to get started in Abu Dhabi?
Sir, you could not have described Emirati culture any more clearly than I would be able to. We're a very hospitable nation. There's a reason we have the #1 passport in the world, and that is travel passport in the world. And that's because we build strong long-term allegiances and partnerships with companies and countries. And I think that's very important, is that we don't just look at this at one level, we look at this across levels. And I think that when you look at what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and that was a very strong initiative from my team to make sure that, not only was there an announcement in terms of saying that we were going to, for example, open an office in Israel, that we were going to showcase what it is that Abu Dhabi has to offer, but that we actually demonstrated that we meant it, right? And when you open our website in Israel, you do see it in Hebrew, right? And that is the first step in how it is that we want to supply this relationship. I think if you look at the opportunities in Abu Dhabi and you look at what it is that you can access here, I think where we have been experiencing the most demand over the last 6 weeks from our Israeli counterparts is, what is there on the ground in Abu Dhabi? What data can you provide us? Where are the opportunities? And I think identifying this, mapping it out, working with the various ecosystems that exist in Israel and the ones that are either here or that we're trying to amplify in Abu Dhabi is where it is that we're going to find that opportunity. Now, I can give you example after example based on different sectors, but I suppose the easiest way for us to do this is to really sort of welcome those questions, take on board what it is that your audience are looking to accomplish, contact us with questions, concerns, feedback, recommendations, and let us try to take that and drive it forward with our policymakers and with the business community. And if I may add one more thing to that point, and I think this is an important point, and I've already mentioned it, but this is the time for the real ambitious players in both markets to get around the table and really iron these things out, really make sure that it is that we're driving not only the right narrative, but the right approach, the right behavior, and really capitalizing on the opportunities that both countries have to play with.
So a new relationship, a new start, and a very warm welcome. Thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Tariq bin Hendi. Our next guest is Abdullah Saeed Juma Al-Naboodah, chairman of the Al-Naboodah Investment Company and a member of one of the UAE's most prominent and successful business families. Mr. Al-Naboodah, thank you for being with us. You have just announced a partnership with OurCrowd to increase business ties between the UAE and Israel. What do you hope to see as a result of that agreement?
Well, thank you for hosting me. I'd like to start with that we're really delighted to have signed with OurCrowd. I think for our business, it's vital that we were one of the companies that started these relationship with Israeli companies, and who other than OurCrowd. OurCrowd is, for us, it kind of ticked a lot of boxes. They are the company that we were looking for in terms of they have invested in startups. We think that a lot of startups in this region would like someone like OurCrowd to help them develop this kind of business and in all the tech businesses. And for us is it's creating basically profit for all of us, for our investors, for OurCrowd investors, and we're really looking forward for it.
For our viewers in Israel and elsewhere, tell us what kind of success the UAE has seen so far in developing startups for the regional and global market.
Well, you see, the UAE has always been probably the hub for the Arab world in terms of tech businesses. We've seen a lot of tech businesses sold for more than a couple of billions. And we think that it's probably the best suited country in the Arab world to have all these tech startups and proven track record, proven legislation, proven with a lot of companies like Souk, Kareem, you name it. A lot of them, one of them was listed in NASDAQ recently. So I think it's a proven track record that the UAE has successfully been one of the best platforms in the Arab world.
Now, if I'm an Israeli entrepreneur or investor, what kind of opportunities should I be looking for in the UAE? What are the areas where Emirati startups are showing most promise?
I think there is a few with fintech. I think agri-tech. UAE needs agriculture, as you know. We're a desert, and I think with the Israeli expertise in agri-tech, there could be a lot of opportunities here. And especially that the government the UAE government is largely investing in agri-tech. And who can we partner with other than Israeli businesses who have been in the forefront of improving that technology?
And finally, beyond the business advantages, how should we think about the broader significance of this partnership between an Emirati company and an Israeli company?
Well, I mean, I think there are a few groups in the UAE were really, upbeat with the agreement that was signed with Israel. We in our group, we were always tracking Israeli technology and looking at it, but we didn't have the chance to engage. And believe me, from the second day of this agreement between UAE and Israel, the second day we started the meeting with a lot of Israeli companies. We're really happy about it, and I think it will benefit both countries.
Thank you. Abdullah Saeed Juma Al-Naboodah, chairman of the Al-Naboodah Investment Company. So what is it like for an Israeli to do business in the UAE? One of the people who was the fastest to respond to news of the peace deal was Jon Medved, the CEO of OurCrowd. Nearly a year ago, he became the first Israeli investor invited to appear on a public stage in Abu Dhabi after years of doing business in the UAE. Jon, you've just signed a major partnership deal with Abdullah Al-Naboodah's group. What would you say to Israelis who are now getting their first glimpse of the Emirati tech landscape?
I would say that it is an exciting time for our two countries to be coming together, and in particular for our two tech communities to be coming together. We are so pumped about the possibility of working together, not just with the amazing UAE investors, but with the UAE entrepreneurs. I think that Israelis need to understand that the UAE has a leadership and very, very deep expertise in a variety of key areas, ranging from smart cities to desert agriculture, to healthcare, to logistics, where their port is one of the leading ports in the world, airlines, transportation, and the numbers of startups that we're looking at already that we find exciting, some of which you'll be hearing from on this broadcast, I think is going to be quite a welcome and exciting development for Israeli investors. So there's a lot of opportunity to invest in the UAE. The government of the UAE has been extraordinary in terms of its willingness to go out of its way to make an investor-friendly environment. There is all kinds of support, much of which is very, very reminiscent of the support we get from the Israeli government. They have that and more in many cases in the UAE. The regulatory regimes are favorable. There are organizations who are sponsored by the government who are making your life easier as an investor. And what's more important is that the actual warmth and enthusiasm on the part of Emiratis, as you're seeing today on the broadcast, has been incredibly heartening, because it's great to do business, but it's really, really fun to do business with people who are genuinely excited and positive about this development. And so I think that all the stars are aligned for a great beginning to a long-term, fruitful and productive relationship between Israeli investors and Emirati investors, Israeli entrepreneurs and Emirati entrepreneurs, as we link these two tech ecosystems in strong and long-lasting ways.
Jon Medved, the CEO of OurCrowd. Our co-hosts today are Emirates Angels, a non-profit investors association based in Abu Dhabi, which is already establishing ties with OurCrowd and other groups in Israel. And here is the chairman of Emirates Angels, Masaood Al-Masaood. Perhaps you could start by telling us how Emirates Angels began and who's involved.
Thank you, Matthew, for the intro. The Emirates Angels Investor Association, like you said, is a non-profit. We started early on in 2020. We've been in talks before that to form really a group where we get early stage investors. And the whole point really is to fill in that early stage investment gap from individual investors and from the private sector. So the whole idea was to get a group of like-minded people together, joining hands and really looking at angel investing and looking at the opportunities. We also, angel investing is in the region. It's relatively a new thing. Investors are typically inclined to invest in the classical asset classes, and when it comes to angel investing, it's looked at really as a new kind of investment class. So one of our goals really is to spread the culture of angel investing, bring in best practices from all over the world. We use the Kaufman Foundation to set up our association in terms of the resources, in terms of the governance. We also, part of what we want to do is demystify this beautiful science of angel investing. It's really a science and an art. And really simplify the whole process as much as we can through, if it's knowledge sharing, if it's sharing experiences with other angels, and really collaborate in investing in startups. Another thing is that, what we really want to do is connect the startups to the investors, and also connect to ecosystem partners in the UAE. So we have a lot of different things developing rapidly. The ecosystem from where it's been a couple of years ago has developed really well, I'd say. And there's so many players that angel investors can really tap into in the United Arab Emirates. So what we really want to do is get the angels involved through deal sharing, through events, through pitch days. Knowledge sharing is another important aspect. I think, like I said, it's a relatively new field, and typically angel investors, or those who have tried angel investing for the first time, might have done it in a wrong way. Angel investing is a risky investment class, and we all know that 1 or 50% of companies invested in will fail. This is after the seriously vetting out the companies looked into. So a lot of people had bad taste when it comes to angel investing, and they would invest in one startup, the first one sometimes that comes to their mind, and most probably that wouldn't go well, and then they wouldn't want to do that again. So we're really here to share the best practices, share the experiences on how it's done in the best way possible, of course, to kind of give the investors the best chance of their investment seeing the light, and also give the startups the best chance of succeeding. So it's not just about investing the money, it's also investing time. Sometimes these startups do need the guidance, sometimes these startups do need expertise. Our members are really come from various different professional backgrounds. So you have players in real estate, you have the oil and gas players, you have people, for example, who are into agri-tech, and really it's that network effect that will kick in and enable the investors to have the best chance, from getting different perspectives from all these different fields, in order to have really and create success stories.
So a rich future ahead. Thank you very much, Masaood Al-Masaood, the chairman of Emirates Angels Investors Association, our co-hosts for today. Now, another main agency helping startups in the UAE is the Abu Dhabi Global Market, known as ADGM, which is an international financial center and free zone located in the capital of the United Arab Emirates. It combines a registration authority, the Financial Services Regulatory Authority, and its own ADGM courts. Steve Barnett is the Executive Director for Business Development at ADGM, and he joins us now. Steve Barnett, before joining ADGM, you had 30 years of experience in business development, including leading the risk and regulation practice at Deloitte. What has been the impact of the ADGM on the local business environment since it opened 5 years ago?
The big difference in bringing ADGM into this marketplace is that we now have somewhere which is truly an international financial centre. We've directly applied English common law, which makes a difference for many of those international firms that want to come into this region and do business. The predictability, certainty and familiarity of the basis of law really helps international actors and international investors to do business here. So that's probably one of the most important things. But also we've been able to bring innovation into this marketplace in great form. So we've supported through our regulations and through our practices, frankly, the development of new businesses. We've brought in an acceleration ecosystem, which has allowed startups to really come in and thrive. And we've been a very innovative regulator as a whole. We've brought new things into this marketplace, and some of the things we've done here have been innovative for international regulators all around the world. So, for example, the types of things that we've done with digital assets and the way in which we've made digital assets an acceptable asset class with proper protection for investors has been really groundbreaking. So not only is it about making this a place where people feel comfortable to come and do business and to invest, but also to embrace and encourage innovation, both from startups and also from existing players.
And in what practical ways does the ADGM support startups? And that could now include Israeli-founded startups that want to be based in the UAE. What actual support and practical support do you give them?
Well, some very tangible practical things. We've put in place an innovation license, which is a low-cost license that really helps people to get on the ground. We recognize that people need to be revenue-led, and that for startups, cost is important, especially in the early stages. And then we've supplemented that with a growth phase license, so you don't just jump straight from a low-cost startup license to a fully absorbed license fee. It gives people the opportunity to progress. We've also encouraged the development of Hub 71, which is the startup incubator here, which provides incentives that allow people to get on the ground and get operating as quickly as possible. And again, to do that in a way which really allows them to operate before they start incurring too much cost. That obviously is supplemented with the WeWork working environment that we have here. We also work very closely with the Abu Dhabi Investment Office as part of the Gadan 21 structure, and there are opportunities there for people to get funding, to take investment, and to grow quickly as well. So if you add that to the work that we've done to grow the ecosystem here, bringing in accelerators like Plug and Play and Techstars and KPMG Digital Village, Microsoft and other people that are important for an innovation ecosystem, then you really have something which is providing a full platform that enables people to come, get on the ground and start doing startup business here from day one.
And how many of the startups, or what proportion of them are locally based, and how many of them are coming from other places around the world that Israeli startups would feel comfortable joining that ecosystem?
We've seen a very international playground here, and we've seen innovators come in from as far afield as the US, India, China, the UK, all around really. So this is an international financial center in every sense, and the people that we've got doing business here are truly international. I was just talking to some of the OurCrowd team before we started these sessions today, and they came across to the SALT conference that we held in December as part of a crowd before the Abraham Accord started. And I think we're really taken by just how international the UAE is and how much Abu Dhabi has done to encourage people from all around the world to come here and take advantage of our ecosystem.
Thank you, Steve Barnett, Executive Director for Business Development at the Abu Dhabi Global Market. So what makes the promise of an active business bridge between Israel and the UAE interesting to investors and entrepreneurs alike? Dr. Sabah Al-Binali is a veteran Emirati businessman, investor, and entrepreneur who's been involved in some of the country's key exits, and he joins us now. Dr. Al-Binali, how do the Israeli and UAE economies compare? Are they even compatible for joint business projects?
I think that their sizes are make them quite compatible, predominantly because they're approximately the same size. My experience has been when the UAE tries to partner with companies with economies that are much larger, such as the United States, the UK, or other European countries, the UAE economy is seen so small that the opportunity viewed by these companies is one of just sales, whereas the UAE and Israel being about the same size makes it material for companies in both countries to open operations in the other country.
And as Israelis start to look seriously for the first time at potential partners, investments, cooperation in the UAE, what kind of tax or other regulatory issues are they going to come across?
I think that this is one of the important elements in making the UAE interesting for Israeli businesses. And that is that, on the one hand, the regulators such as ADGM, we're speaking DIFC, and of course the central bank and ESCA, they're world class. On the other hand, from a tax perspective, there is a sales tax, VAT 5%. However, there's no corporate income tax. So that gives an added benefit. It's almost an automatic tax rebate, whereas other countries have to enact tax rebates for companies to expand into their domestic market. The UAE, it's already there. And that can be, if you're talking about a 35% tax rate, that's a 50% increase in profit right there. That can make quite a difference.
And what about business ownership for foreigners or foreign corporations? Is that going to be a problem?
I don't see that as being a problem. There are different jurisdictions that can cater to anything that you need, including 100% ownership. So there are 37 free zones in the UAE, including, and there's of course the federal market, the framework. So that gives you a lot of choices, a lot of options, and I think that if you review them, you'll find as a business, you'll find what suits your needs. We've had global businesses from around the world set up here, and they're all happy.
And as someone with vast experience of local business and regional investing and entrepreneurship, what excites you most about this new era of relations between the Emirates and Israel?
I think what I find most exciting is that you actually have a natural fit between what each can add. So if we talk about the UAE is a natural resource rich and very tiny local population, which means that financial capital far outstrips the human capital, and that's why we have all our sovereign wealth funds that go invest it globally. What I see in Israel and my understanding of Israel, because of their immigration policy and the Jewish community around the world, their human capital has outstripped what domestic financial capital can usefully be deployed. What this means is that the surplus in one of these markets fits the deficit in the other market. And I think this combination, including what we spoke about earlier, the same size economy, so they're meaningful, and close physical proximity, is quite exciting because you're not going to necessarily see competition in terms of the way things are. Here you have a lot of investment. We're very good in the UAE in deploying capital. And Israel, there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of tech. And each one of these markets wants what the other has. So I see it as quite a natural fit.
Dr. Sabah Al-Binali, thank you very much. So what kind of startups can we expect to find in the UAE? We're going to take a quick look at 3 of the companies backed by members of the Emirates Angels. First, we take a look at farming. Hatch and Boost is a VC and incubator in Dubai focusing on various sectors, including food tech. And their portfolio company, World of Farming, is a homegrown UAE AgTech startup that creates smart and energy-efficient farming technologies to aid and support food security challenges. World of Farming integrates AI-powered tech platforms and energy solutions to help farmers grow their produce faster and cheaper with less waste, less carbon emissions, and more nutritious value for local communities. And here to talk about World of Farming is Faris Mesmar, the co-founder and managing partner of Hatch and Boost, and Motaz Abu-Hijleh, the CEO and co-founder of World of Farming. Thank you for joining us. Motaz, how have the particular farming conditions in the UAE shaped the technology that's being offered by World of Farming?
We live in a very harsh climate in the UAE. We're always above the 40 degrees average, very humid temperatures, plus it's very salty in the air. We always have to look at modernizing the agricultural scene and growing indoors into the vertical farming industry paths the way for us to become a major producer on a global level of crops, either conventional no crops or modernizing the agriculture scene by growing specialty crops that serve us in our region in a very particular market.
Faris, tell me, what's the basic business model for the company? How do you see it scaling?
Yeah, so within venture building and within Hatch and Boost and the portfolio, we're sector agnostic. We're looking at different sectors. So since we started, we're looking at business models that intersect between tech and impact, and World of Farming represents a major component of that. There's a lot of environmental impact and a lot of social impact that is being measured, and ever since we started, we're being very serious about sustainable and social impact. We want to empower local communities. We want to modernize traditional agriculture in the UAE and in the GCC, and we want to expand within the different countries in the MENA region. In addition to that, we want to revive this whole agriculture scene in these countries by deploying technology and being the ultimate vehicle that will take agriculture to the next level by deploying technology and artificial intelligence solutions and being extremely asset light in our operations.
Motaz, we're in the middle of this dreadful global pandemic, and one of the things that has happened as a result of the coronavirus and the lockdowns and the suppression of international travel has been a real challenge to the supply chain. In what way are the technologies that you're developing going to help local people use local produce?
Being in the agriculture scene locally, growing our own crops internally within our borders, helping farmers become a 365 days a year agricultural farming industry growers has a huge impact into such pandemics by having sustainable growth 365 days a year. So we're not affected by such causes of COVID and logistical breakdowns within the existing system around the world. This is key factors of becoming a self-sustainable country on agriculture. We're not only looking at human crops, but we're looking at animal fodders and different sectors within the agriculture, looking at alternate proteins, looking at future foods as well. So in this way, WAF covers multi-sectors within the agriculture that is creating a self-sustainable agriculture within here in the UAE.
So Faris Mesmar from Hatch and Boost and Motaz Abu-Hijleh from World of Farming, thank you both very much indeed.
Thanks a lot.
And now to supercars. W Motors launched the UAE's first autonomous vehicle. It was the first privately listed company on the Nasdaq Dubai. It's producing advanced patrol vehicles for the Dubai police, and in 2021, the company is planning to unveil a fully electric supercar. Joining us now is Ralph Debbas, the founder and CEO of W Motors. Ralph, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Matthew.
The UAE is a small country with limited manufacturing capabilities. I think I'm right in saying there was no automotive factory in the country before you opened your plant at W Motors in January 2020. How have you managed to build a complete automotive business in such a challenging environment?
It started with a dream, just a passion to bring the industry to the region, starting off step by step with international partnerships on the global level, and try to bring the expertise locally here. And last year, we were ready to say that now, after many years of challenges of going internationally, participating in global events, and saying that now we're ready to build cars locally, to build the technologies, and start exporting the talent from the UAE for the first time. And we're proud to have the groundbreaking of a factory last January in Dubai Silicon Oasis, which is the first automotive factory in the UAE that has an R&D center, technology lab, engineering center, and design center with full manufacturing in the back to cater for our products and third-party products for authorities, governments, and anybody looking to build mobility products through W Motors.
And are you looking just at the local market, or do you see your market expanding regionally or even globally?
Well, our brand is international. So since the beginning and inception of the brand, it was always a global brand with global markets. Our major markets are mainly Asia, US, and Europe. The GCC is building up bit by bit, and especially when it comes to special projects such as the government cars. Mainly we're targeting the GCC area here with export to different territories. The autonomous program is built for the export in different territories. However, the supercars, and we believe once we get to the EV supercar next year, it's going to have quite a strong market on an international level, as we're positioning it to be very competitive in price, very advanced in performance, and offering technologies that people have never seen. So we do believe there is a big gap in the supercar EV market, and we're hoping to fill a part of this gap by creating the first EV coming from the region.
Now, you're building next generation vehicles with full autonomous driving, collision aversion, and other cutting edge technology. And you may know that automotive tech is one of the areas where Israel is also emerging as a leading player. Are you going to be interested in potential partners in Israel in developing any of those technologies?
Absolutely. I mean, especially when it comes to the autonomous program, which we launched around a couple of years ago, and the first car was out last year. And we made it clear that we are not developing the autonomous technology ourselves. We are partnering up with international companies to implement their system within our cars as a POC, but we will be the manufacturers of the cars as a white label. We will be the fleet operators and will be the service providers, meaning the car itself is a modular car with a white label. It doesn't have any brand. The car comes in as a, let's say, a kitchen. The modular interior goes in as a kitchen, the car becomes a mobile kitchen, the application is kicked off, and it's a service that we're providing as a police station, an ambulance, a pharmacy, a restaurant, you name it. And this is what we're creating here. It's a new software, an application, a service, and a vehicle. When it comes to the system of the autonomous, definitely having international partners such as companies in Israel or others, we are more than welcome to join this initiative to start bringing in the technologies to the UAE.
As you say, you've basically created from scratch an entire new sector in the UAE. What would your message be to Israeli entrepreneurs trying to enter the UAE market? Are they going to find it a good place to do business?
Oh, absolutely. I believe the UAE is the perfect place to do business, especially when it's location. Location-wise, we're in the center of the Middle East. We're very close to Asia and very close to Europe. So connection-wise, it's fantastic. Marketing-wise, being based here to launch a product, to launch an event from the UAE always gets the attention that we need to get us on the global level. And then as a support-wise, knowing the initiatives that are taken, especially now during the COVID pandemic, I believe the UAE government realized that we need to start focusing a lot on the startups, on the SMEs, and on the technology sector. So this is the right time, it's the right place, and knowing the people around here, you have the right people as well to support such initiatives to launch new companies and new sectors in the UAE.
Ralph Debbas, the founder and CEO of W Motors, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now to real estate. Urban is a platform that brings you the entire rental journey online, allowing you to inspect a home, visit it on your own, and pay your monthly rent all within the app. Their introductory video on YouTube has had more than 500,000 views since February. And joining us now is Mohamad Kaswani, the co-founder and CEO of Urban. Mohamad, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Matthew.
Why did you choose to launch this rental startup in the UAE?
Yeah, Matthew, to be honest, we couldn't possibly think of a better market to launch Urban than the UAE for a number of reasons. Digital adoption is incredibly high. Response from the local community has been very positive. The regulatory environment is also incredibly supportive. There's been tremendous support from the regulators in us doing what we're trying to do. And there's also a great deal of forward-thinking investors in town that have been supportive to the business. So just the general landscape is very supportive of the startup community.
And is the platform scalable? Are you planning to expand it to other markets?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, Urban was never meant to be a local play or even a regional play. We've always had global aspirations for Urban, because the problems that we are solving are universal in nature. And we see this platform applicable in even more mature markets like London, New York, Singapore, Hong Kong, etc.
As you look to expand and move into those other markets, you're going to come up against the competition that already exists. So how is the Urban platform different from other property search portals like Property Finder or Bayut?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very common question. Look, in fact, our view on the evolution of the PropTech sector in general is that, if you remember, Zillow started as what I call the grandfather of PropTech around 2006 or 2005. And what they did with those listing portals, again, followed by Property Finder, Bayut, Dubizzle, Rightmove in the UK, etc. What the search portals did is they simply moved the listing from the newspaper to the internet. But the clear trend that we've been seeing in the market is, a movement towards more journey ownership. And the way we view this is, with more journey ownership, you're able to create more value in the market. So after the search portals, if you look at the US, for example, digital brokers such as Redfin and Compass evolved, and then it was followed by even more journey ownership with Open Door evolving. And and it's a very clear trend, because now even the traditional players, even the Zillows and Redfins of the world, are moving towards more journey ownership with joining Open Door with iBuying. The space that we like to operate in is what we define as a managed marketplace, and that's where you maximize this journey ownership. And we're seeing clear trends, and it's very encouraging to see other players in different markets that are trying to solve different problems.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mohamad Kaswani, the CEO and founder of Urban. Now, many of you have already sent questions to our participants using the Q&A button, and please continue sending them in. And I see we have our first question, which is for His Excellency Dr. Tariq bin Hendi, the Director General of the Abu Dhabi Investment Office. Being asked by somebody here in Israel, how does it feel for you as an Emirati official to be speaking directly to an audience in Israel after all these years of disconnection?
It's great. And I think that, the human spirit is such that we find a way to communicate. I lived in New York and in London for almost 10 years between those two cities. I have many Israeli friends, many Jewish friends, Christians, Muslims, every religion, every background. And I think that one of the things that has come out of these accords is that we are already so close in terms of our relationships on a global scale that now we're just formalizing that. We're making sure that we are driving the right type of behavior in terms of having that seat at the table, making sure that we're talking about all the important causes, whether they be business related or whether they be human related. We have to make sure that we are sitting there, we're taking a different approach, we're making sure that we drive change together. And I think that's a very important part of the narrative that today sometimes I believe might be lost at times when we are talking about just purely investment and purely business related items. There are a whole slew of things that have come out of these boards that are beneficial to us across every discussion. And so I think for me, I'm incredibly proud at the bravery of the leadership in both countries, and clearly with the support of the US in terms of helping to facilitate this. But it's been great. And I have to say, I've caught up with a lot of old friends from New York, spoken to a lot of people, realized that even if we haven't had formal conversations in decades, we're still only 2 or 3 degrees separated from one another. And that's important to remember. And I'm frankly fascinated with the opportunities that exist. I'm really curious to find out how it is that we continue to build on the positive discussions we've had so far. And most importantly, I'm looking forward to welcoming all of my Israeli counterparts, peers, companies to Abu Dhabi so that we can show you how hospitable we are in person. So I really look forward to welcoming all of you here soon.
So our next question is for Abdullah Al-Naboodah. Have other Gulf countries interested in establishing relations with Israel asked you about your experiences so far?
Well, to be honest with you, not yet. But I think as soon as we start the OurCrowd UAE and we'll start visiting those countries and explaining the business, I think there'll be a lot of questions.
So our next question is for Steve Barnett from the Abu Dhabi Global Market. Steve, with your lengthy experience in business development around the world, what would you say are the key differences between doing business in Abu Dhabi and the Emirates and in other parts of the world?
I think that this part of the world has been extremely welcoming for business coming in. One of the things that we keep hearing is that as a regulator, we're quite unusual in that we seem to take a role in encouraging good business, whereas many regulators around the world perhaps have focused a little more on preventing bad business. Now, the standard that we set is equally high. The bar that we ask people to cross is equally high. It's really what you do after that. I think that consistently with our culture overall of being welcoming and hospitable, we've also extended that into business as well. So we've made people from all around the world feel extremely comfortable doing business in this part of the world. You know, I've found that relationships are important wherever you go in the world in business. In this part of the world, a relationship that's well built and well established, it can be very enduring as well. So, you know, I'd really encourage people to get on the ground, start building good, strong relationships, and those relationships will endure. So maybe that's in a transactional world is something that makes this part of the world a little bit stronger and a little bit easier as a place to do business.
This is a question for Mohamad Kaswani of Urban. The UAE is predominantly an international population, and has that been an advantage in developing your marketing and your business?
Yeah, it absolutely has been. In fact, this is one of the many reasons why we've chosen this market as our initial launchpad. Because like I said, we couldn't possibly think of a better place for proof of concept. And Dubai, presents a great opportunity in the sense of not only diversity of our community, but also diversity in our build structure, right? We have skyscrapers, we have villas, we have, beach homes, we have desert homes, we have all of these different, high-rise, low-rise, etc. And that's been, a tremendously great story. And the idea here is if we're able, and the logic behind it here is if you're able to succeed and demonstrate that product market fit in Dubai, there's no reason why you wouldn't be equally successful in cities around the world.
The next question is for Sabah Al-Binali. Do you see the region developing into an integrated regional economic power like the EU, or are we talking about initiatives in individual countries?
I'm not sure we would like to use the EU as a blueprint. I think there is already integration. The language is the same. Residents, not just citizens, but residents of GCC countries can travel freely between each other without visas. And the currency risk is one of the largest issues. The GCC countries are all pegged either directly or nearly 100% to the dollar. So we already see a lot of that integration happening. I think we're just going to see more growth or continued growth. And the recent formalization for the UAE with Israel is just adding yet another important bridge to the GCC. I could almost see it as the GCC as being a leaping point down into South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Israel being a leaping point into Europe. And that combination is just makes things so much stronger and better.
Here's a question for Faris Mesmar from Hatch and Boost. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the other sectors that you are focusing on?
Yeah. So within Hatch and Boost, we're focusing on startup models that intersect between tech and impact. We have different verticals. The first, as we told you, is food technologies and agriculture technologies. When we look at other startup models, we're very serious about designing these solutions for the MENA region, right? And we cater for the market needs and the market segments, and from there onwards we start developing these business models locally. So another vertical that we're focusing on is femtech, female technology, and female technology is an unattended and untapped category in the MENA region. What we want to do is we want to modernize this whole vertical, and we want to uplift and leverage health tech and personal hygiene within local communities. And we're doing different initiatives within that space. One of them is technology apps, an e-commerce play, and a retail play, whereby we're working hand in hand with brands, and we're working as well on a component that will represent direct to consumer e-commerce. So this is a vertical, and another one as well is a fintech vertical that is in stealth mode.
Well, I think that's all we have time for. If your questions were not answered, then we'll be reaching out to you, or the speakers will be reaching out to you individually. I'd like to thank all our speakers for joining us today for a superb session. We'd like to thank our co-hosts, Emirates Angels, and everyone else who took part. And we'd like to thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again soon at the next OurCrowd online event.